Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, as we proceed into a new era of the world that's utterly changed forever, and it'll never go back to where it was, at least for us here in the divided states of America. Country very divided, and something like this could even divide it even further. And you wonder if there could ever be balkanization at this point because of all the factions and the mistrust basically in government at this point. When you compare 50 to 100 years ago, people looked up to their country much more than they do now. And the speed of information, how people are getting their information, it's very hard to hide the facts, and eventually they come out. So now the United States finds itself in a very bad situation, along with our greatest ally. As you can see, this man here, the spiritual leader, was killed, him and most of his family, during negotiation. This has been a typical tactic to kill people during negotiations. They'll hit that place again, like they call it a double tap, to hit the first responders. Whatever you think of this man, he probably was not the greatest guy in the world, I'm sure. And he probably did hate a lot of people. He believed nuclear weapons were a sin, and they shouldn't be used. So whatever you think about that, he's gone. The successor, his son, took over, and he's going to be full of revenge. He's probably not going to have the same considerations as his father did, and it's going to push him even further to want to get the bomb, the weapon. When you just look at the terrain of Iran, Iran is 90% mountains? Very inhospitable place to be if you're going to be fighting a war. And they've been preparing for this for generations. They've been planning for a ground invasion. And if the U.S. wants to keep its petrodollar to be the world's reserve currency, they are going to have to put in ground troops to invade Iran. And that's going to be very hard. I mean, you could put it on parallel to Vietnam. And how are you going to convince, our sons and daughters to fight for the petrodollar? Our military strategists and planners and leaders that have been bought off. How do you convince them that they're doing this for a just cause? They were basically attacked for thinking they might do something in the future. So what we're going to do, we're going to nuke them because they might have nuked us. It's a really bad road to go down. There's just a bunch of bad options. There's no good option here. You're going to have to make a lot of concessions. And really, Trump, he's going to have to walk a lot of things back. He's going to have to do some type of reparations. And there's going to have to be some type of joint understanding between our greatest ally and Iran. Their conquest of land is going to have to be on the back burner for a very long time now. Unless you want to have 200,000 Americans to try to take over Iran. And it's not a good place to be, really. It's full of mountains. They have caves everywhere. You're going to have to go into these caves. And you're going to have to root them out like rats. And it's not going to be pretty. There's going to be a lot of casualties. And pretty much you have one side that's just going to be doing it for the money, or doing it because, they have ulterior motives, or, And then you have another country that's doing it for their survival, doing it for their country. And if I was to think about a foreign force like China or Russia invading the United States, the mainland, you could imagine the spirit, the fight that people would have for defending their homeland. And we can't think that any other homeland has got to feel the same. Especially when you consider an ancient civilization like the Persians. Yeah, they're not going to just fall down easily. It doesn't matter how many leaders you kill, you're not going to be able to kill the spirit that these people have. And there's just a bunch of bad options. So I was trying to think, what would be some of the best options left? What could we possibly do to settle this down, for these people to come to some type of peace, permanent peace? Because the status quo, the road that we are going down is not safe for anyone. It looks like it's going to shut down the world's economy. Pretty much when gas goes up, everything else goes up with it. So, what can be done at this point? What can be done to stop the bloodshed, for things to have some type of going back to normal? And it seems that there's going to have to be a lot of concessions. And there's going to have to be more concessions on the American side than there is on the Iran side. Unfortunately, direct negotiations between the United States, Israel, and Iran cannot be done. You need someone to be an intermediary. Most likely, it's going to have to be Russia that has to help with the negotiations. The United States backstabbed these people during negotiations, so how can the United States be trusted again? That was one of the main things that came out during a speech, which really wasn't a speech, it was written text. So a lot of people are wondering if the son is also very seriously, gravely wounded as well. And that goes for Netanyahu as well. The latest speech that came out from him, it looks like he's got 6 fingers, and that's a typical AI catch. So, we're wondering about the leaders on both sides here. Now, you're going to have the Russians help negotiate. And unfortunately, America is going to have to give up a lot. The Iranians want America to close all their Middle Eastern bases. That's a lot to ask for. That's almost a no-go. But perhaps they can close the closest ones to Iran. Okay, it's a start, right? So you could start there. Well, they want the right to enrich uranium. So how do you go about that? Well, I think the only way that you're going to be able to convince the Iranians not to enrich uranium is it has to be fair on both sides. So, if you don't want the Iranians to have a nuclear bomb, the Israelis shouldn't have a nuclear bomb either. I think that's how it should go, right? I mean, the Israelis never admitted that they had it, so they should have no problem just giving them up if they never said they had them, right? So how can they demand them not have it and they have it? And I think that's very important. There is this thing called the Samson option. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Our greatest allies, they have nukes pointed at us if things go sour for them. And I don't think that's good for anybody. So I think there should be weapons inspectors that dismantle both countries' nuclear programs. They might go for that. It can't be the Americans dismantling. It would have to be an international team with some Russian advisors, some Chinese advisors. They would have to be part of that. And that's pretty much the only way I think they would agree to give up their weapons program. Okay. I think that would be a safe thing for the world. Another thing I think that would have to be done is that Israel, for its right to exist, they do have a right to exist, they should become a state of the United States. Because, as we've seen, it appears that they're the ones that are pulling the strings, forcing the Americans' hand here. And that's not healthy for the United States, and that's not healthy for them in the long run. Because as you can see, yeah, the United States is a great military power, but they can't be in all places at all times at once. And as you can see there, the empire is shrinking big time. It's collapsing fast. And as you can see, they're pulling their THAAD system, their missile defense system, out of South Korea. That's not good. South Koreans don't like to hear that. This is just giving Kim Jong-un some vibes that he can do what he wants. They have to be restrained. Israel has to be restrained. They should have a governor. They should be able to have elections and be a state, be a United States. And I think that can start the healing process. Maybe 100 years from now, things can change. But right now, for stability, for the world, for the United States to get back on its feet, the United States can't have another country dictating its foreign policy. It's just not healthy. So I think that would be the next step. This thing is with the Iranians, they are now saying, if you want your ships to cross the Strait of Hormuz, you have to use yuan. You have to use the Chinese currency. So this is going to push these countries away from the petrodollar. Saudis already agreed to it, that they're going to be buying a bunch of yuan. And if they want yuan, they have to trade gold and silver for yuan. So, China is basically set up here to be the world's currency in yuan. You have all these countries are going to do it because they want oil, and they got to cross the strait, and it's only 60 miles. A big part of the world's oil supply goes to there. It just really seems like it was a very short-sighted plan that they had. They thought that, oh, we're going to kill the leader, we're going to kill a bunch of buildings, we're going to bomb a bunch of shit, and everybody's going to fall down, they're going to do what we want. I think the egos got really inflated with Venezuela because they were able to pull off what they did. They thought it would be very easy, and it's just not that way. And I think that they thought they could get away with it, and they would be home in a week, and it was all going to be done. And really what it looks like is that they were going to have to put boots on the ground, potentially 200,000 to 300,000 men is going to take to control Iran, and it's probably not even going to be enough in itself. You're going to have like a coalition of the unwilling. And when you compare the people now, because during 9/11 they suckered a lot of people with that to join the military. Even when 9/11 happened, when I first saw it, I wanted to join because I was like, what's going on here? So really, unless they don't have something happen again like 9/11, you're not going to have a bunch of people just run out and want to join the military to go fight this war in Iran for no good reason, really. So hopefully nothing bad happens, but even if it does, I don't think a lot of people are going to fall for it anymore in this age of information and disinformation. So freedom for Iran. Well, that could mean a lot of things, really. It could be freedom to import and export, to lift the sanctions. So here's what they want. They want America to close all of its bases around Iran in the Middle East. Okay? That's asking for a lot, but there's going to have to be some concessions there. They're going to have to remove all sanctions. Okay? That's, I don't see why they can't do that. They're going to have to reparations for all the damage that they've done with their bombs. And we're looking at billions and billions, probably over $1 trillion already, And the United States is in this huge debt. We're around 50 trillion now. So it's, just another trillion. Rebuild, reparate Iran. So that's a lot of money right there. And what else? Oh, and Trump has to apologize. That's probably going to be the hardest thing right there, because he has a really hard time admitting when he's wrong, unfortunately. Can't admit when he has a mistake. He acts like that's the worst thing he could ever do. So he has to have some humility, and he has to admit when he was wrong. It looks like he was pressured into this decision. Somebody probably has a lot of dirt on Trump. Trump is in these files. As you can see now, it looks like Israel, without the radar systems that we have, they've been getting a lot of damage to their infrastructure. And I think even they want a ceasefire. But it doesn't look like the Iranians are going to have a ceasefire until they get some of these demands. I don't think the U.S. wants to give up its petrodollar. But the way things stand now, if they don't put boots on the ground, the Chinese are going to be fast-tracked with the yuan to be the new petro yuan. It will become the world's reserve currency. So in a way, this war has fast-tracked that process. So it looks like that the United States is planning a military draft. I don't think I'm going to be going to the draft because, I'm about 50. But they're going to be definitely looking at you 18-year-olds to 20, 29. That group is probably going to be the ones that will be sent there. So if I was in that age group, I would probably move to another country. There are some other things you could do if you don't want to be drafted. You could wear a diaper and you could shit yourself for a couple weeks, get it really nasty and crusty. If they see you like that, they probably think you have mental problems and they probably won't draft you. So that's something you could do. Where I live, and I'm sure there's places all around the United States that are like this, but there was hideouts for people in Vietnam in World War II that people went to. So I could see a bunch of roving bands just in the wilderness, just avoiding the draft. Or I don't see it going down at all like before. It's not going to be so easy, you see those videos out of Ukraine, how they just come in the vans and you just try to take random kids off the street and just grab them, throw them in the truck, and then ship to the front line. And you can't win a war like that. Those people aren't reliable. You need a voluntary force for a good ground war. You just can't put a rifle in a kid's hand who doesn't want to be there and say, go forward. It's going to be hard. They're going to look for ways out. There are going to be some people shooting themselves just to get away from this. And I can't blame them. This is not a war I'd want to fight. I would fight for my country if it's being attacked. I could not go halfway around the world and fight for oil, because that's what it is. And there's not a lot of good options. I could see this very well happening, that we as the United States will not want to lose our hegemony if you don't put troops on the ground. How are you going to be able to stop that from happening? Because their drones, their Shihad drones, cost about 30 grand. And our missile defense systems, each missile is like $1 million. So you just do the math, 30,000, $1 million, and it's only like 15% effective. The math just doesn't add up. They've been making these for several years, these drones, and they've invested heavily in them. So unless there's some counter drones that are economical that can counter these on their missiles, if they can't bring the price down, and the manufacturing is not what it used to be here, that it's going to be very hard to keep up with that.